The Ghost Ship. Mercy's End materialized out of the void like a prayer answered by the devil himself, her hull gleaming bone-white against the asteroid field's jagged shadows. I'd heard the stories my whole life. Every 19 years, she comes calling to the desperate souls working the Kepler belt, offering passage to somewhere better, somewhere safe. Most folks called it spacer's madness, the kind of tale that grows in the dark between the stars. But when you're watching your 8-year-old daughter cough up blood into a recycled air filter, madness starts looking like mercy. My name is Elena Vasquez, and I've been mining these rocks for the better part of a decade. Used to be, that meant something. Honest work for honest pay. A future you could build with calloused hands and stubborn will. These days, it just means dying slow while the corporations squeeze every last credit from your bones. The company store owns my soul, the medical bills own my future, and little Sofia's sickness owns what's left of my heart. The Mercy's End hung there in the black, maybe 2 clicks off my starboard bow, her running lights pulsing like a heartbeat. She shouldn't exist. No ship that old could maintain structural integrity, let alone life support. Her design spoke of an era when humanity first reached for the stars with more hope than sense, all graceful curves and brass fittings that belonged in a museum, not the void. But there she was, real as the debt notices cluttering my comm array. Sofia pressed her face against the porthole of our cramped habitat pod, her breath fogging the reinforced glass. "Mama, what's that ship? It's so pretty." Pretty wasn't the word I'd use. Beautiful, maybe, in the way a funeral is beautiful, all ceremony and finality. The Mercy's End called to something deep in the human spirit, the part that remembers when death was a journey instead of just an ending. "Just another hauler, Mija," I lied, pulling her away from the window. "Come on, let's get your medicine." The medicine that cost more than I made in a month. The medicine that wasn't working anymore. I'd been running calculations all morning, same as every morning for the past 6 months. Sofia's condition was degenerative. Something in the recycled air or the radiation exposure that came with life on the frontier. The company doctors called it environmental adaptation syndrome, with the kind of clinical detachment that made you want to put your fist through their smug faces. What it meant was simple. Without proper treatment, she had maybe a year left. With proper treatment, she might see her 20th birthday. Proper treatment cost 2 million credits. I had 300 in my account. The comm system crackled to life, filling our little pod with static and something else. Music, faint and haunting, like a lullaby sung in a language I'd never heard but somehow understood. Sofia's eyes went wide, and for a moment the pain lines around them seemed to ease. "This is Captain Mordecai Cross of the vessel, Mercy's End," came a voice, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as intoxicating. "I'm broadcasting on all frequencies to any soul within range who finds themselves at the end of their rope, staring into the abyss with nothing left to lose." I should have cut the transmission, should have powered down the comm, and pretended I'd never heard those words. Instead, I found myself reaching for the response key like a woman possessed. "To those who hear this message," Captain Cross continued, "know that salvation comes with a price. The Mercy's End offers passage to a place beyond the reach of corporate greed, beyond the touch of disease and despair. But understand, this is a one-way journey. You leave everything behind, everyone behind. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. We depart at the next solar tide. The transmission ended, leaving nothing but the hum of life support and Sofia's labored breathing. She looked up at me with those dark eyes that held too much wisdom for someone so young. "Mama, are you crying?" I wiped my cheek, surprised to find it wet. "Just some dust in the recycler, baby. Nothing to worry about." But worry was all I had left. Worry and a choice that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground behind you was crumbling away. I spent the next hour researching everything I could find about the Mercy's End. The records were fragmentary, scattered across decades of shipping logs and frontier folklore. She'd first appeared in 2387, offering transport to a group of indentured miners on Titan Station. They'd vanished without a trace, presumed dead when their hab modules were found empty and sealed from the inside. Every 19 years since, the pattern repeated. The ship would appear near some godforsaken outpost or mining operation, always when people were at their most desperate. Some took the offer. Most didn't. Those who did were never seen again. The smart money said it was an elaborate con game, or worse, pirates using ghost stories to lure easy prey. But pirates didn't maintain ships for over a century. Pirates didn't appear like clockwork every 19 years. And pirates sure as hell didn't broadcast on open channels, giving their marks time to think it over. Sofia fell asleep in my arms while I worked, her small body burning with fever, despite the climate controls. I held her close and tried to imagine a world where she could run and play without gasping for breath, where her laughter didn't turn into coughing fits that left her exhausted and afraid. The company would never approve the medical leave I needed to get her proper treatment. They'd made that clear when I'd asked, begged, 3 months ago. "Frontier life isn't for everyone, Vasquez," District Manager Harrison had said, not even looking up from his tablet. "Maybe it's time you considered relocating to a more suitable environment," as if I had anywhere else to go. As if starting over with a sick child and crushing debt was even possible. The comm crackled again, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. This time it wasn't the Mercy's End. It was Tommy Rodriguez from the mining platform 2 sectors over. "Elena, you copy? Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." Tommy had been a friend since my first day in the belt. One of the few miners who'd treated me like an equal instead of an intruder in their boys' club. He'd lost his own wife to the black lung 2 years back, knew what it meant to watch someone you love slip away by degrees. "I'm not thinking anything, Tommy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Bullshit. I saw your scans of that ghost ship. Elena, listen to me. Whatever that thing is, it's not salvation. It's death with a pretty bow on top. Maybe death's better than this slow torture." The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of words we'd both thought but never spoken. Finally, Tommy sighed, the sound crackling through the comm like distant thunder. "Bring Sofia over here," he said. "Let me watch her while you think this through. You don't want to make this kind of decision while you're holding her." He was right, of course, but right and possible weren't always the same thing. "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering. Hell, Elena, if positions were reversed, you do the same for me." That was true enough. In the belt, you looked after your own, or you didn't survive. It was one of the few things that made life out here bearable. I bundled Sofia in her warmest clothes and took the short hop to Tommy's platform. His hab was bigger than mine, cleaner, too, but it carried the same smell of recycled air and industrial lubricants that marked every human outpost in the belt. He took Sofia with the practiced ease of a man who'd raised 3 kids of his own, settling her on his couch with a mug of hot chocolate and an old vid screen loaded with cartoons. "She's gotten worse," he said quietly, watching her struggle to get comfortable. "Company docs say she's got 6 months, maybe 8. That's with their treatment protocol." And without? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Tommy poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that had seen better decades, adding a generous splash of something stronger to each. "So what's the real story with that ship? And don't give me the company line about mass hallucinations and shared psychosis." I told him everything I'd found, every scrap of data and whispered story. He listened without interruption, his weathered face growing more troubled with each detail. 137 years, he said when I finished. "That's a long time to maintain a con game. Or a long time to perfect it. Maybe. But what if it's not a con? What if it's exactly what it claims to be? A way out?" The question hung between us like smoke from a dying fire. Outside the porthole, the Mercy's End continued her silent vigil, beautiful and terrible in the starlight. "Even if it's real," I said, "even if there's some paradise waiting on the other side, I'd be abandoning everyone I've ever known. Everyone except Sofia." "Everyone who's already given up on you, you mean?" The words stung because they were true. The company had written me off the moment Sofia got sick. My family back on Earth had stopped returning my calls when the bills started piling up. The few friends I'd made in the belt were struggling with their own problems, their own impossible choices. Sofia laughed at something on the vid screen, a sound like silver bells that dissolved into another coughing fit. Tommy and I both moved toward her, but she waved us off with the stubborn independence that broke my heart a little more each day. "I'm okay, Mama," just tickled my throat, but the tissue she pressed to her mouth came away spotted with red. "I need some air," I said, which was a joke in a sealed habitat, but somehow Tommy understood. He nodded toward the observation deck, a small blister of reinforced glass that offered a panoramic view of the asteroid field. I floated there in the low gravity, watching miners' lights twinkle like fireflies among the rocks. Each light represented a person, a story, a life measured in tons of ore, extracted and debts accumulated. It was honest work, but it was killing us all by degrees. The radiation, the recycled air, the constant stress of living one equipment failure away from vacuum. The Mercy's End had moved closer, near enough now that I could make out details of her construction. She was even more beautiful up close, her hull decorated with intricate engravings that seemed to shift and flow in the starlight. No human shipyard had ever produced anything like her. My personal comm chimed with an incoming message, priority encrypted. The sender was listed as M. Cross. I stared at the notification for a long moment, finger hovering over the accept key. This was the moment of choice. The point where I either turned away from the abyss or stepped into it with both feet. I accepted the call. Captain Cross appeared on my screen in full holographic detail, and I had to grip the observation deck's railing to keep from floating backward in surprise. He was tall and lean, with silver hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes the color of deep space. His clothes were cut in an old-fashioned style. Long coat, high boots, everything in shades of midnight blue and silver. He looked like something out of a historical drama, or a fever dream. "Ms. Vasquez," he said, his voice carrying that same whiskey-smooth quality I'd heard in the broadcast. "I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but I couldn't help noticing your interest in our little ship." "How did you—" "Get your private comm code. My dear woman, the Mercy's End has been sailing between the stars since before your great-grandmother was born. We've learned a few tricks along the way." His smile was warm, but somehow sad, like a man remembering better days. "I understand you have a daughter. Sofia, isn't it?" The casual mention of her name sent ice through my veins. "If you're thinking of threatening her—" "Threatening?" Cross looked genuinely shocked. "My dear Ms. Vasquez, I'm offering to save her, both of you, if you're willing to listen." "I'm listening." "The place we're bound for. It's not what you might expect. Not some shining city or pastoral paradise. It's simply elsewhere. A place where the rules that govern this reality don't quite apply. Where a sick child can be healed, where a desperate mother can find peace. And the price? Everything you've ever known, everyone you've ever loved, save what you bring with you. The passage is one way, Ms. Vasquez. There's no coming back, no changing your mind once we've departed." I thought of Sofia's labored breathing, of the medical bills that would follow us to the grave, of the company's cold indifference to our suffering. What happens to the people who don't take your offer, the ones who stay behind? Cross's expression grew even sadder. They continue as they were, living, dying, struggling against odds that grow worse with each passing year. The belt is dying, Ms. Vasquez. The easy ore is gone. The corporations are pulling out, and the people left behind will find themselves stranded in the dark between stars. You're saying we're all doomed anyway. I'm saying you have a choice, a real one, perhaps the first you've had in years. The connection flickered, and for a moment Cross seemed less solid, more like a projection or a memory given form. "I'm running out of time," he said. "The solar tide waits for no one, not even us. If you're coming, bring only what you can carry. Leave everything else behind. How long do I have? 2 hours. After that, the Mercy's End departs, whether you're aboard or not." The transmission ended, leaving me alone with the stars and the weight of an impossible decision. I could stay and watch Sofia die by degrees, or I could trust a ghost ship and a captain who might not even be human to carry us to salvation. I made my way back to Tommy's living area, where Sofia had fallen asleep on the couch, despite the vid screen's cheerful noise. She looked so small, so fragile, like a bird with broken wings. "Well?" Tommy asked. "He's given me 2 hours to decide." "And?" I looked at my daughter, at the friend who'd offered to help despite having nothing to give, at the life I'd built in the spaces between the rocks. "I don't know." Tommy refilled his coffee, added another splash of whiskey. "You know what I think? I think you decided the moment that ship appeared. Everything else is just working up the courage to admit it." He was probably right. The rational part of my mind was screaming warnings, listing all the reasons this was insane. But the rational part of my mind had also told me to trust the company doctors, to believe their promises of affordable treatment and worker protection. Rationality was a luxury I could no longer afford. "If I go," I said, "will you tell people what happened? Make sure they know we weren't just running away? Elena, promise me, Tommy. Whatever else happens, promise me that." He nodded slowly. "I promise, but I still think you're making a mistake." Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. I gathered Sofia in my arms, feeling the fever that burned through her small body like a slow fire. She stirred but didn't wake, trusting me to carry her safely through whatever came next. That trust was the most precious thing I owned, and the heaviest burden I'd ever carried. The trip back to my hab took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Every familiar sight, the mining platforms, the supply depot, the communications array, seemed to glow with significance, as if I was seeing them for the last time, which I probably was. I packed light, just as Cross had instructed. Sofia's favorite stuffed animal, a worn rabbit named Mr. Whiskers, a few changes of clothes, the hollow pendant that held pictures of my parents, long dead but not forgotten. Everything else, the furniture, the equipment, the accumulated debris of a life lived in small spaces, I left behind. Sofia woke as I was sealing the travel bag. Mama, are we going somewhere? Maybe, baby. How would you feel about taking a trip? Will there be doctors where we're going? Good doctors who can make me better? The hope in her voice nearly broke me. I think so, Mija. I really think so. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Then I want to go. The shuttle bay of the Mercy's End was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The walls were covered in the same flowing engravings that decorated the hull, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with possibilities. Captain Cross was waiting for us, looking exactly as he had in the transmission, except somehow more real, more present. Ms. Vasquez, Sofia, he nodded to each of us in turn. Welcome aboard the Mercy's End. Are there other passengers? I asked, looking around the empty bay. Not this time. It seems you were the only ones desperate enough to take the leap. Cross knelt down to Sofia's level, his ancient eyes gentle. And how are you feeling, little one? Tired, Sofia admitted, but excited too. Mama says you're taking us somewhere better. I am indeed. Would you like to see your quarters? The ship's interior defied every law of physics I'd ever learned. Corridors that should have been cramped felt spacious, and rooms that looked small from the outside opened into vast chambers filled with soft light and impossible architecture. Our quarters consisted of 2 rooms, connected by an archway, decorated in warm colors that seemed to respond to our emotions. Sofia ran from room to room, laughing with energy I hadn't seen in months. Mama, look, the walls are singing. She was right. The ship itself seemed to hum with life, a deep thrumming that felt less like machinery and more like a heartbeat. Whatever the Mercy's End was, it was more than just metal and circuits. The transition will begin shortly, Cross said. I should warn you, it can be intense. Reality becomes somewhat flexible during the passage. How long will it take? Time moves differently between the spaces. Subjectively, perhaps an hour. Objectively, he shrugged. Does it matter? I supposed it didn't. Time was just another thing I was leaving behind. The ship shuddered, and through the porthole, I watched the familiar stars begin to shift and blur. The asteroid field fell away, and with it, the last traces of the life I'd known. Tommy's platform was a distant spark, then nothing at all. Sofia pressed against my side, no longer coughing. Mama, I feel different. Better. I looked down at her and gasped. The pain lines around her eyes were fading, and her breathing came easier than it had in months. Whatever was happening to us, it was already beginning to heal her. The transition lasted forever, and no time at all. Reality folded in on itself, showing us glimpses of impossible vistas. Cities of light hanging in empty space. Forests of crystal trees that sang in harmonies beyond human hearing. Oceans that reflected not the sky above, but the dreams of those who sailed them. When it ended, we were somewhere else entirely. The Mercy's End floated in a harbor that defied description, surrounded by other ships from across human history and beyond. Some I recognized from history books, generation ships from the early colonial period, sleek naval vessels from the corporate wars. Others were clearly alien in origin, their hulls inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Welcome," Cross said, "to the harbor of last chances." Through the porthole, I could see a city that seemed to have grown rather than been built, its spires and domes flowing together in organic curves. People moved through the streets. Humans, yes, but also beings I had no names for, all existing together in apparent harmony. What is this place? A refuge, a place for those who've reached the end of one story and are ready to begin another. Cross smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, the sadness in his eyes was touched with hope. "Your daughter will find healing here, Ms. Vasquez, and you'll find something you've been looking for even longer than a cure." "What's that?" "Peace." Sofia tugged at my sleeve, pointing toward the city. "Mama, look. There are other children playing in the park. Can I go play with them?" I looked where she pointed, and saw them. Dozens of children running and laughing in a space filled with flowers that bloomed in impossible colors. Among them were adults who watched with the satisfied expressions of parents whose greatest fear had been lifted from their shoulders. "Yes, baby," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You can play with them." As we disembarked, I felt the weight of my old life falling away like shed skin. The debt, the fear, the crushing responsibility of caring for a dying child in an uncaring universe. All of it belonged to someone else now, someone I used to be. The harbor of last chances welcomed us with open arms, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in happy endings. Behind us, the Mercy's End prepared for her next journey, carrying hope to the desperate and salvation to those brave enough to leave everything behind. In 19 years, she would appear again in some forgotten corner of space, offering the same impossible choice to another soul at the end of their rope. But that was tomorrow's story. Today, I watched my daughter run laughing through a field of singing flowers, her lungs clear and her future bright with possibility. Sometimes, the only way forward is to let go of everything you think you know and trust in the kindness of strangers who sail between the stars. Sometimes, salvation really does come with silver hair and eyes like deep space, offering passage to a place where love is stronger than death and hope burns brighter than the sun. Sometimes the ghost ship is exactly what it claims to be, and sometimes that's enough.